students, Saira. I hope you are all well. In today's session, we are going to study about the history of clothing materials. In previous session, we have seen how natural or synthetic fibers are twisted and converted into yarns with the help of spinning machine. Then how these yarns with the help of weaving and knitting method are converted into fabrics. So let's begin with today's session of history of clothing material. What kind of cloth are you wearing right now, children? I know, since you are at home, you are wearing some comfortable clothes, isn't it? Yes, but when you used to come to school, you used to come in your proper school uniform. Well, what about those people who lived in the past in ancient time? The ancient men, what did they wear? Do you want to know about it? Then children, come on, let's find out. Look at the pictures which are shown on the screen. You have two pictures over here. Do you think there is any kind of difference between two pictures? Yes, first picture is of modern outfits. You can see children wearing modern clothes, whereas in second picture you can see the traditional clothes worn by the children. Isn't it, students? What kind of clothes do you wear these days, children? Yes, it is correct. It is modern clothes. Humans are the only species on the earth who wear clothes. We do not find any other living creature who wear clothes. Yes, even animals or trees or even birds don't wear clothes. And why do we wear clothes, children? We wear clothes to protect ourselves from the weather and to look good as well. And the type of clothing depends upon the geography and cultural condition of people in each region. That means type of clothing also depends upon the place we live, in the culture that we follow and the tradition that we follow. Next is, what did ancient people first use for covering themselves? Here children, let's find out what they were wearing. Children, ancient people started wearing clothes more than 1 lakh years ago. You know why? To protect themselves from harsh climate like cold, heat and rain. For their covering, ancient people wore very simple clothes made of things like grass, leaves, animal skin were the only sources available in their environment. Now look at these pictures. In first picture, you can see the sandals. You know with what they have made of? Yes, these sandals are made up of grass and rope. You can see in the second picture how men are wearing skirts made up of thick grass. Isn't it amazing, students? How the early people use the simple things like grass and rope to help them to protect themselves from the various harsh climate. Now in this picture you can see the clothes, how they are made with the help of leaves and twigs. So these were the materials used to cover their bodies in the ancient times. The next picture shows some people standing in the cave. Can you see how they covered their bodies? They are covered with the help of animal skin. So they used to cover their bodies with animal skin. You know that, children? In older days, the early man, they used to kill the animals. They hunt the animals for food and eat flesh of these animals. Isn't it, students? So after they had done with the eating, they used to dry these skin, and then they use this dried skin for their covering of their body. Then people who lived in cold region, they used to cover themselves with the animal fur. They used to get this animal fur from the fur animals, and they made it into clothes which they use for their covering. Even the shells and the bones were used by the early men to cover their bodies. Now, bark is the another thing which early human used to cover their bodies with. What is the bark, students? Bark, it is the hard outer covering of a tree. So, ancient people used the bark of trees to cover their bodies. As century passed by, the people started weaving fibers to make clothes. What is weaving, students? The process of making clothes by crossing threads. So, weaving is the one of the important turning point in the history of clothing materials. Because of weaving, people started wearing clothes as one piece of cloth just wrapped on their bodies or tied with the ropes or twigs of the plants or trees. Especially these Egyptian men, they used to cover their bodies with just one piece of cloth. There is a word that is used here that is called wrapped, meaning to cover or to just loosely attach a cloth around something. So, these men were used to cover their bodies with just a single piece of cloth. And how did they do it? Yes, children, they tied with the rope or the twigs of the planted tree. Next is the flax fiber. Children, the flax fiber is also known as hemp fiber. You can see in the picture that hemp fibers or flax fibers. Flax is the oldest fiber. Linen, which is made from the flax fiber, is an expensive fiber. Flax fiber we get from the flax plant, or we can say that hemp plant. Just like how we get cotton from cotton plants. Hemp fiber is obtained from hemp plants. After noting down this point, again we will come back to our question, what did the ancient people use for covering themselves? And then, because of the invention of needle, they begin to sew leather and fur to make clothes and shoes. We can see here shoes which are made from leather and fur. How did they make it, students? Yes, it is with the help of needles only. Needle is the most important invention in the history of clothing materials. As I mentioned earlier, you can see in the picture leather cloth were soon possible with the help of needle. Now, in this modern days, we wear stitched clothes made from different kinds of fiber like cotton, silk and wool. So, there are two turning points in the history of clothing materials. And what are those, children? they are weaving and needle. So weaving is the turning fiber into fabrics and needle helped the swaying different kinds of material together to make cloth. So these two are the two turning points in the history of clothing materials. Now next we will look at the similarities between the ancient and the modern day clothing. Then and now, what is the most important purpose of clothing, children? Yes, it is for the protection of them ourselves and of course to look good. Then during ancient time, people wrapped a single cloth. Even now, we use single cloth for wrapping. For example, turban, shawls, stole, sari, dhoti, etc. You can see in the picture a child is wearing turban and woman is wearing sari. So these two are single pieces of clothes. Two more examples for single pieces of cloth that men wear even today are lungis and shawls. So dear students, we have come to the end of the today's session. Let's summarize what we have learnt in today's session. We have seen clothing in both ancient and present day, or we can say in modern days. Ancient clothing consists of animal skin and fur. Apart from these, even grass and leaves were used for the protection purpose. Present day, we stitch cloth from the different materials. So, we have also learnt about the single clothing and wrapping, which was possible with the help of the twigs and the ropes in the ancient time. Then we have seen hemp or the flax was one of the first fiber used. Sewing with the help of needle and weaving are the turning points that changed the history of clothing. With this, children, I am ending today's session of history of clothing material. Along with this, even I have completed chapter number 3, fiber to fabrics. Yes, children? Okay, then goodbye, children.